a star in the nighttime. I'ma go hard when it's my time. Yeah, I'm hard and I'm light. You know you can't pause when the time's right. Sitting in the stars and watching you. You gotta ride the tug away.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 on Chatbox with Sam. Today's guest is actor-director Alex Winter. Good afternoon, Alex. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's fantastic that you're here. I know you're very, very busy. You've just come back from England. You must have jet lag. And you're off to
I do a little, but not terrible, thankfully.
No.
Yeah.
And you're off to Vancouver this afternoon.
I'm not, thank God. I'm just doing that on Zoom.
It was nice to meet you at the screening in San Francisco at the Draft House Theatre for the YouTube Effect. You've done quite a lot of documentaries, you know, Zappa, Deep Web was very close to me, you know, because I come to the screening there. With the YouTube Effect, what feedback was you hoping for after people watching the documentary or coming to the screenings?
I think an emotional connection to the film. I think that's kind of what you really want from people. You know, we make movies that are about people in very intense situations. So it's really about those having an emotional impact on your audience, and that's the most important thing. Is that creates an investment in the story, and sort of conveying that is what we go for.
And do you think that YouTube and Google, they're the largest companies obviously in the world, and it's much more than a social media platform. Do you think they should be policed a little bit more with the content that's coming out of their streams?
Yeah, I think there should be specific government regulation and oversight that we're not seeing, which I think is odd for companies this big that have so much impact on society. I think that you wouldn't have that in any other kind of industry, and I think there are reasons why we don't have it here that we need to figure out. But I do think it's well overdue that we regulate these companies.
Well, obviously Gail Herd had she had a good idea of you two producing this documentary.
Gail literally reached out to me personally. She had seen some of my other tech docs and wanted to collaborate on this, and had a really, I think, a really strong passion for telling the story. And I've been around the tech community for a long time. I've made 3 other feature docs in this space, and I've been looking at Google for a long time, and also had my own opinions, pretty strong opinions about what I hadn't seen being talked about in this space. So I really enjoyed working with her. She's amazing and has an amazing career and history under herself. And so it's been a very strong collaboration. I couldn't really ask for a better partner. We've been traveling with this movie all over the world together, and it's been very, very good for the movie, but also I think it's been good for both of us to get the story out there.
Yeah, and I know with your documentaries you always keep an open mind and a transparency. And you found that Google, when you were interviewing Steve Chen, they were very open with your questions. When you were going into it, was there anything different that you felt when you came out of it that you wasn't expecting?
I think that it always happens with these movies, right? So there was a lot of things that I came out of that I wasn't expecting. I didn't really know the full scale of this platform going in. I mean, I knew it in terms of numbers, in terms of data or stats. But once you really start telling a story with people, you get a real sense of scale. And YouTube is just enormous. It's just so much bigger than any of the other platforms that it gets compared to, even though it isn't really a social media platform per se. It's just a lot more than that. And its functions are far beyond a social media platform. But I think the scale of it just really hit home, and how many people around the world are on this thing all day long. And so the impact that it's having on society, and not just our society here at home, but really societies all over the world.
Around the world. Yeah, do you think that we're exceeding our technology sometimes and forgetting our humanity of eye-to-eye contact, going out for a coffee with someone rather than the internet? Because, you know, what do you think about that?
I don't think that so much. I think that human interaction is very important, and I think it's really uncommon for people to just isolate via the internet, unless they were the type of people that would have isolated even when there was no internet, because of course that's
Right.
just, there are people like that. But my kids are online all day long, but they're also outside all day long, and they're also with their friends all day long, and they're also they're reading books, and they're doing other things, and all their friends are the same. So I think the internet is really largely an extension of human evolution. I don't think that it's really kind of a separate thing from that. And I think that COVID showed us actually how real interaction is online,
Absolutely.
and how for those of us who got cut off, my kids were going to school online, and it was the only way we were connecting with our family was online. And it was very
Yeah.
meaningful, that eye-to-eye contact. But I do think, to your point, that the technology has gotten ahead of us, probably more from a business standpoint, in terms of, I think the creators of these platforms and these technologies, because nothing has happened like this in human history, aren't totally prepared for the scale and the growth, and the
Right.
impact and influence of their own companies. I think that's gotten away from them a little bit.
Well, that's what scares me a little bit, the influence, where hate is allowed over and over. And, the internet, if it wasn't for the internet, I wouldn't be able to speak to my mum in England. So,
Exactly. Yeah. A
yeah.
lot of people were complaining about the internet, and then COVID happened, and they found themselves online all day long. And
Yeah.
thank goodness they could do that, because that was the only connection that they were getting. And if we had not had the growth of these online communities and these advances in technology, we wouldn't have been ready for that in 2020. We wouldn't had the capability to just turn these systems on like Zoom and
Right.
all interconnect. And the speed at which that happened, at which all of humanity basically moved onto these online communities, was overnight. I mean, there were bumps in the road, but suddenly you just had all kinds of people who often never wanted to touch a computer or a phone were locked to it, and thank goodness. And I think that really shows you that these are just tools. They're just human tools. That's all they are, and they can be used for good or ill. And unfortunately, we get into this in the film, YouTube in many ways is monetizing a lot of this hate that you're talking about. And so they're not incentivized to get rid of it. And that increases the level of hateful content that's out there.
Right. I agree. There's good and bad with everything. Do you think it's going to get any better?
I think that things are going to get better in many ways. And unfortunately, they're going to get worse. So I think that long term we have to have more regulation and oversight, or things are going to get radically worse. And I don't think we can afford for that to happen. So I think that over the next few years, I think we're going to see more things like the January 6th insurrection. We're going to see more
Yeah.
things like shooters that are influenced by things that they're seeing online, killing people. And that's tragic. And I think it's also unnecessary. But we don't have oversight and regulation in place. And until we do, as Anthony says in the movie, it's really a digital intersection without a stoplight, and there's going to be some nasty accidents in that
Right.
intersection.
Right. What was interesting to me when I met you and when you were talking about the algorithm, how really you think it's overrated, that people shouldn't really be looking at the algorithm?
I think that the algorithm as a kind of an end-all topic of harms or implications is kind of a diversion tactic by big tech. Obviously, algorithms are in play, and obviously certain people should be talking about algorithms, but I think those people are tech engineers, people who actually know what an algorithm is and know what it means to discuss an algorithm. I think the idea that the public is so caught up in algorithms is really a bit of a ruse by the tech companies, because it prevents anyone from doing anything.
Right.
Because the average citizen hears the word algorithm and their brain shuts off because they don't even know what that means. And that's intentional. That is a way for these monopolies to just get everyone to leave them alone and to have the status quo remain the status quo.
Yeah.
So I think that is something we have to get past, because I think that that's a very significant problem. And these are not algorithmic issues at the end of the day in terms of how the public could be looking at them. They are just business issues. It's sort of like the Wizard of Oz, where you have the wizard saying, "Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain," and
Right.
that's the algorithm saying that, right? But
Yeah.
behind the curtain, you just got this very, very human old man
I know.
yanking on a bunch of levers. And that's the same with any of these tech companies. There's just people back there. And people back there are making choices that are very human, that have nothing to do with an algorithm. They just have to do with largely with profit.
Okay, and going back, I know you love theatre, and I've been watching quite a few of your interviews, and you'll be doing theatre soon, hopefully.
Possibly. I just like it. And I'm investigating doing some more.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you
But I
think you're...
can't talk about it specifically. It's sort of,
No, NDAs and stuff,
yeah.
yes. I
Yeah.
understand completely with NDAs.
Yeah.
You know, you were in a lot of films, Bill and Ted, Grand Piano with Elijah Wood, Freaked. I know you're very partial to Freaked and posting about that right now on social media. So, and Lost Boys is one of my favourite films. I'm sorry. I know I do like Bill and Ted, but Lost Boys is the favourite because I love vampires. So, and I was listening to a few stories about that. With new documentaries, obviously you're very involved. And when I asked you the question in San Francisco, what brought you into doing documentaries? And you says because you couldn't get the funding.
No, we couldn't get the funding for a regular movie about Napster that I was writing.
Do
Yeah.
beg your pardon. I wish I had
Yeah.
a brain like Einstein, but I don't. So, do you think you'll ever do a documentary regarding Twitter?
I don't think so. I think that I'm sure people are out there in the field making that right now. I mean, that story really broke a long time ago, and anybody who really wanted to do it should have been on the ground doing that, like months and months and months ago when Elon first bought the company. I mean, I would potentially do a doc on AI, but I wouldn't do that now. I would do it like 5 years from now, when we actually know what the implications are going to be from AI, we really don't know. There's a lot of hypothesizing, but not a lot of hard fact yet. So I would do that down the road, maybe.
Okay, I'd like to ask you for the younger generation, because of the abuse that can go on and stuff. What advice could you give to the younger generation that want to enter the film industry and how to protect themselves?
I think that you know, if you're really young, having good parents that keep an eye on what you're doing, that's a good way to protect yourself. If you're, you know, of college age and up, then it's sort of understanding, keeping an eye out for the potential dangers. But I also think it's an amazing industry, and I recommend it to all people most of
Me
the
too.
time. And there is a lot of primarily really good-hearted people in the industry. It's
Yeah.
not primarily a Shark Tank. So I think that it's sort of aligning yourself with the good people. It's something that I've always worked really hard to do. Find the good folks that are in the industry and align yourself with those people, work with those people. And then the experience tends to be much better and more rewarding, but also you don't have as much conflict. And you don't end up in dangerous situations because you're dealing with decent people.
Right. And I agree, I've never had any negative at all. I've enjoyed every guest that's been on my show, and I've gone and met in person in Los Angeles. Amazing people. I do have to say about Bill and Ted Face the Music, the ending was phenomenal with the music, how it brought everyone around together in unity and humanity, and that really touched me. I thought it was a great script, the very ending of that. So
Thanks. Yeah, we worked really hard on it, and the writers, Chris and Ed, worked really hard on it. And the ending, you know, we made the movie before COVID, obviously, or before we even knew about COVID. But the ending was actually made and sort of revised while we were in the middle of COVID. So it was sort of intentionally commenting on how the world was so unable to be together because of COVID. So there was this feeling of lack of unity and a kind of a desire for people to feel unified. And that was in a way where that very ending came from, was really kind of addressing where the planet was at that time.
okay. And what you can't find on Google or YouTube, what are your favourite hobbies?
You know, being with my family. I wouldn't call it
Yeah.
a hobby, but my favorite thing to do is be with my family. So that involves cooking and any of the hobbies that my kids like, and doing that with them. My youngest is really into making films right now. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, anything to do with that is very rewarding. But playing music and that sort of thing, riding motorcycles. The same stuff I've been doing since I was a
As a
kid.
kid. I know.
Yeah.
And you did spend time in England too, didn't you? So what was your favourite
Yeah.
food over in England?
Indian food.
Mine too. I cook an
Yeah.
amazing korma.
There you go.
It's awesome. So, and how has music influenced your life? What music do you like?
Kind of everything, right? Like I'm kind of an all-arounder.
80s.
So everything, well, 80s, but also different genres, classical, jazz. I'm really into jazz. So it's really all kind of eras. I mean, I came up in the 80s, so a lot of that music is very close to me,
Yeah.
especially sort of the post-punk era. But that's why on the Lost Boys soundtrack, I was so excited when they got the Echo and the Bunnymen to redo The Doors, which is my favorite track on that soundtrack. It's amazing. But yeah, I'd say kind of all music, and music is the great unifier. So two of my kids are really into playing music, and one of them is actually in school for music. So it's been a big thing in our family.
And he's good at art too. I saw that when I met you at Pensacon. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, my eldest is an artist.
I know. I've got teenagers and grandchildren. So
amazing.
I know. Redheads.
That.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're redheads.
Yeah.
So have you got any last words that you'd like to say to the audience, or some advice? I know your YouTube Effect was released on July 14th, and it's been in Tribeca Theatre since 2022 in the film festival circuit. So they can go and watch that where?
It's actually being released on digital on August 8th. August 8th, we'll have links up all over our sites telling people where to get it, but they'll be able to get it all over the place, including in the UK and a lot of other territories. So I'll post that. But really, August 8th, it goes wide. We've just been theatrical.
So I kind of felt like I vetted Steve, but I had a lot of questions for him before being excited about interviewing him. And I had to make sure he was okay with us doing exactly what we were going to do without, I didn't show him, I don't even know if he saw the film until very recently. It's YouTube, both owned by the same company, and everything else is like down here. So I think it was largely, having made these other films around the growth of online communities, I was sort of felt ready, and Gail Herd, the producer, came to me actually and asked me if I wanted to do it with her. She had a little bit of access, she knew I had a little bit of access, it was kind of like, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, for old people, or those people.
Thank you so much for being on Chatbox with Sam. It's been an honour and a pleasure to talk to you and meet you in person. Yeah,
likewise, Sam. I really appreciate you asking. It was a lot of fun.
I was that nervous. I sprouted 2 grey hairs and I had to use the spray grey. You take care. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
I'm a bright star in the nighttime. I'ma go hard when it's my time. Yeah, I'm hard and I'm like, you can't pause when the time's right. Sitting in the stars, watching you.